Finding Jesus at the heart of the Gospels, finding Jesus at the heart of His love, learning about the things that He said, finding His love and guidance for living, seeking the gospel and following His ways. We are finding Jesus at the heart of the Gospels, finding Jesus at the heart of His love. There is common ground we found in the four Gospels and beyond, but anchored in His teachings and wisdom. Seeking Jesus, we are searching His word. Seeking Jesus, we are resting in His grace. We are the Good News Fellowship, growing and following His love. We are the Good News Fellowship, seeking Jesus' guidance from His word. We find peace on this common ground, allowing space to grow. We find peace on this holy ground. Sacred ways are felt and unity is sound. Peace in the knowing that this good news can be found. Jesus at the center of our hearts, 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 Jesus at the center of our hearts. Welcome to our Good News Fellowship. Welcome to our Good News Fellowship.
You love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
Hello and welcome to another SDAQ&A where I promote freedom of speech, finding common ground, interviews with Seventh-day Adventists, current and former, right across the spectrum, and where we get to hang out every week at this time and tomorrow at this time as well. Great to see you all here, and thanks for joining me today. Last week, we had a revisit and a rewatch of the Des Ford Glacier View series. I can't even remember who I re-interviewed, replayed. It'll come back to me soon. But we also looked back at this incredible era where we will be revisiting today the 1930s and 1940s. Over 90 years ago, people, and prior to that, we know very well that Canright was very much raising concerns in the 1870s and 80s. And I think this book, though, was released in 1919. And the other one was quite early on, 79 maybe. So people have raised questions and had concerns about Ellen G. White and her ministry and her prophetic gift and the community that grew up around her as the co-founder. Oh, I would say that if it wasn't for Ellen White, Seventh-day Adventism would not have taken off. So when we say she is the founder and people say, oh, well, I don't think she was the founder. She was one of several people. Well, officially that is true, but if it wasn't for her alleged visions and the claim that she made that God spoke to her, gave her visions that confirmed many of the teachings, all of the teachings, in fact, if it wasn't for Ellen White's authority, prophetic gift, the Adventist Church, Seventh-day Adventist Church, would not have begun. And so people were raising questions about her in the early, soon after even 1844, right through until the Adventist Church officially formed in, I think, 1863 or 1864. And the interesting thing, and this is just my theory, the interesting thing about that period of time, 1844 up till 1919, is that people like D.M. Canright, Ballinger, many of the others who raised questions and criticisms and concerns, they did have a voice in community. They would write books, release pamphlets, and write letters. And again, after 1959, up until the present, people did have a way to release and get their concerns out there. But what has really hit me as I've been looking into this story, and thank you very much to Gillian Ford, who put me on to this couple, Robert and Monica Vowless. I think that's how it's pronounced. The era, this is my theory, the era of 1919 to 1959, the Seventh-day Adventist Church were masters of silencing dissent and masters of propaganda. And this is the era. Ellen White had just died, remember, 1915. This era, 1919, and we know all about the 1919 Bible Conference where the minutes were suppressed until the 70s, hidden, lost, and the concerns that were raised in that meeting were hidden in a very powerful way. So we hit this 1919 to 1959 era, and Ellen White is put on a pedestal. The White Estate release so much of her material. The myths of her holding up the Bible grow and grow. And what I discovered, thank you again to Gillian Ford, is that, yes, of course, there were people who were dissidents, pot stirrers, people asking questions during this era. A lot of people refer to that era as the golden age of Adventism. And a lot of people like the CBs and the more traditional Adventists are wanting to return to that era, even though they think they want to return to this historicist era of early Adventism. What they really want is that beautiful mythologized era of the 30s and 40s, and where Jesus was coming any day, where they all had a deep passion for mission, where Ellen White was seen as truly a prophet, where the sense of purpose was palpable, and where all the secrets and questions and criticisms were submerged very effectively. That's my theory. Let me know in the comments if you agree. So when we find and read some of the material that these people wrote way back then, 90 years ago, I am stunned at how concise, articulate, fresh, intelligent, creative these people were. And there's a whole bunch of them. And a lot of them came out of New Zealand. So we are looking at this era. The last 2 weeks, I was reading out Monica Adelaide Vowless, her open letter to the people who had mistreated her. So go back and check that out. She went to Avondale University, Avondale College, back then it was called. I think she taught there in 1924. I forget the material. But W.W. Prescott of 1919 Bible Conference fame was here as well at Avondale here in Australia. She went to the States. She studied. I think she became a doctor. Very intelligent and smart woman. Go and listen to the last 2 programs. And I think they kind of, there's the preamble and me chatting with Gillian, setting the scene, which is fantastic. And then the actual reading of the correspondence, the open letter, begins around 1 hour in, maybe 50 minutes in. Highly recommend that you go and listen to this incredible person, Monica Vowless. We will be looking at Fletcher, Grieve. There's a handful of these New Zealand dissidents. Some of you may not realize that I am half New Zealander. Maybe that's where I get it from. This idea that we need to be able to ask questions, that we need to be able to scrutinize truth claims, and it's okay to do so. A lot of people say, oh, stop attacking the Adventist church. Stop attacking us. No, I'm not even that concerned with, there's things that Adventists believe that are deeply troubling. But you choose whatever you want to believe. My point isn't about your beliefs and necessarily trying to refute them. My point is that your institution tries to silence anyone who asks questions. That's the point. If you're watching and you agree and you can hear what I'm saying and you get it, please write in the comments and share that you do. And by the way, if you are enjoying this content, please lean forward and click like, whether you are watching on Facebook or YouTube or at times Twitter and Instagram. Lean forward and click that like button, and particularly on YouTube, can you hit the subscribe button? So that's my point, that the SDA Church, I think, more than most Protestant churches, because people say, oh, well, everyone has problems. Adventism has a unique problem where most people who ask questions are shut down systematically. Culturally, very rarely do they have their claims and criticisms refuted. They usually find that they have their character attacked. So because of Gillian Ford's research, we get to take a fresh look at a lot of this material that was written in this time period. So thanks to her, we will be looking at more in the future. And today I will be reading part 1 of Robert Thomas Vowless's response. We read his wife's last week, as I said. And I will bring that onto the screen in a minute and read it. And I just encourage you to sit back and listen and enjoy. And hopefully my voice lasts. I'm sure it will be fine. But as you listen, just remember this is 90 years ago, and just listen to how fresh it is. They write about how they are not being heard, that their questions are being turned away. That's my biggest complaint about Adventism. It's systematic and cultural suppression of people who ask questions. That's it. That's my point. And today we look at more correspondence by these two very intelligent, creative, smart Adventist people. I was at my homecoming reunion at Avondale last weekend. I went to one meeting in the afternoon and another lunch. That's why we didn't have Good News Fellowship. But that is on again this week, by the way. So only live to our YouTube channel. So if you're wanting to check that out, you need this week, Thursday night, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, 11:30 a.m. New South Wales time. Go to youtube.com/@Gospel Good News Fellowship. And please join us. It's a wonderful little community growing there. Yes, we used to go live here, but now we've got our own YouTube channel, and we're just looking at the good news of the gospel. Come and join us there. So as we read today, I'm reading direct from truthaurfables.com. And that's where a lot of this material is nestled and hidden away. So go and check them out. I would love to give them a big plug. They have so many resources there. In fact, I'm going to read direct from their website today and have it on the screen. And that way, if you see anything down the side that's promoting their stuff, it just helps to give them a bit of a push as well. And one last thing before I start reading. Gillian has made, it's just about to be released, a mini booklet of all this material of Monica and Roberts, and she can correct me. Does it, Gillian, if you are watching, does it include Grieve and Fletcher and those other guys as well? Let me know. And by the way, Gillian, if you are watching, come and join after as well, and have a quick chat about what your thoughts are on Robert Thomas Vowless. And I'm just getting the the screen share working? It's interesting. I think Robert, can you see that, by the way? Just let me know in the comments if you can see that. Might be a little bit cut off there. Let's see if I can move it over. Oops. Oh no, don't do that. I don't know how to fix that. Maybe I do. Is it still there? Yes, it is. Boy, don't hit that button again. Right, let's have a look if that made any difference. Not really, but I think you'll get the idea and just listen to my voice. And I will read it for you. Sorry, just pressing these buttons here. So yeah, this is Truth or Fables. Great website. And oh yes, thank you to those last week who made donations. I was very pleasantly surprised. A week or two before that, my August expenses were paid. I have, various platforms I have to pay to continue uploading the material. I use Restream. I have a StreamYard account that will be set up more functionally soon. Website hosting, podcast hosting, and I'll add it all up, but I'm pretty sure it comes to somewhere between 100 and 150 a month. And thank you to you guys. September is now paid for. I appreciate that. And anything above that, I put towards my time, and that helps me buy food, pay for shelter, and keep producing this content, which I hope you enjoy. I hope that you're enjoying this material. So there's the details if you'd like to support what I'm doing. PayPal.me/Peter Dixon Music. Okay, so we'll begin reading. Just going to have a quick look at the comments, see who's here, what's going on. Motor Sapien quietly sneaks in and sits at the edge 3 rows from the back. It's good to see everybody having conversations and saying hello to each other. And yeah, good to see you all. Looks like it's getting hot there in California. Okay, well, sit back, relax. We're going to read now this article by Robert Vowless, and it was printed by P.F. Burrows Limited in New Plymouth in New Zealand, and this one was 1933. Just incredible. And so, yeah, let's get into it. It's interesting that it's called Have You Seen the White Elephant of Seventh-day Adventism? It's got a picture there of that, the cover of the booklet. And we have our very own Brian Newman, who has written a book, The White Elephant, as well. He's been on the show a couple of times. If you're watching, Brian, we'd love to have you back on again. Okay, stop talking, Peter, and get reading. Just let me know in the comments if it's not coming through. Okay. Have you seen The White Elephant of Seventh-day Adventism? By R. Vowless, printed by P.F. Burrows Limited in New Plymouth and published in 1933. My dad was 1 at the time, and he turns 93 in a couple of weeks' time. So there you go. That's how long this information has been out there, and during that period successfully suppressed. Okay. Do you know that probation closed in 1844, and now sinners are without an advocate unless they belong to the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Well, that is what their church teaches in books written by their prophetess, Mrs. E.G. White, and endorsed by the Review and Herald, an SDA denominational paper. As this tract discloses, my resignation. When I returned to the homeland from my field of mission work, some of the Seventh-day Adventist members became very enthusiastic that I joined their church, seeing I was, as yet, undenominational, although being a Sabbath keeper and holding largely the same doctrines as this sect teaches. Eventually, I did join them, but later, while studying their doctrines further, I found that I must seriously disagree with their fundamental teachings on the 2,300 days, sanctuary question, and the so-called spirit of prophecy. Although formally I had adopted them on face value. How many of you watching did that? Started having concerns about those very things, spirit of prophecy, 2,300 days, sanctuary question, but on face value, you did adopt them. Let me know in the comments. As I was acting as elder for their church in New Plymouth, it behoved me as a conscientious Christian to abide by what they taught in interpreting the scriptures to others. This I felt I could no longer do, for how could I teach another what I did not believe myself? Again, if you went through that period of, I certainly did, even though I wasn't a minister or a teacher of these messages, I was an Adventist. I was singing and inviting people to come into the church and inviting young people to stay, where these teachings were freely taught and still are. People say, oh, we don't hear that anymore. Rubbish. It's everywhere. Permeates Adventism to this day. And so he said, how could I teach another what I did not believe myself? Whereupon I sent my resignation in on the Monday to the district pastor at Howrah, Pastor L.R. Harvey, requesting a reply by letter or person, and mentioning that he was expected to come and take the service in New Plymouth the following Sabbath. Judging from previous experience with his correspondent, I looked for the prompt reply, which never came. The following Friday, he called me about 2 p.m. at a time when, as he ought to have known, I would not be at home. My wife, this is Monica, that we got to know in the last 2 weeks, I would be at home. My wife told him I would be home at 4 p.m., but he said he could not wait. Neither could he take the service the next day, which then fell to me to prepare. I there told the congregation of my disagreement and my resignation. Another whole week passed without a visit or note from Pastor Harvey, which I considered was pointedly unusual. For previously, he always gave correspondence prompt attention. Let me know in the comments when you left. Did you get replies, visits? How did people follow up and treat you in an official capacity? The next Friday, a short note arrived to state that he would be there the following Sabbath to take the service. I went, fully expecting that he would come in good time to have a private interview with me before the service. This he did not do, but arrived at 11 a.m. to take the service of that hour. After the service, he took us aside, along with a stranger who knew nothing of the circumstances, and he read our letters of resignation, in which we stated that we did not agree with the 2,300 days and kindred doctrines. I like that. The other brother did offer to give us some help on the spirit of prophecy, but all Pastor Harvey did was to ask me if I was converted, or if I only thought so, as he did not think I was. Prior to this, he must have known I was converted, seeing he asked me to take the services for him previously. Doctrines are not the test of our conversion anyway, but belief in Christ, supposedly. Add. I wrote to the North New Zealand Conference Office of Seventh-day Adventists, telling them that I had resigned from the church and to take note of the new treasurer, for I had been treasurer. I received an answer stating that they had noted the address of the new treasurer, but my resignation was ignored. No word of regret or offer to show me my error or probable misunderstandings. Instead, Pastor Sharp was sent down not to seek out the prodigal son or the lost sheep, for he never came near me at all or sent any messages to me, but to warn those that were left of following after. That's interesting. The pastor came down, but instead of talking to Robert himself, he's going off and warning everybody around him. Let me know in the comments if you have had warnings spread. Don't go near that person. Remember, this is a time period where from 1919 to 1959, I believe, where the Adventist machine was at its best at suppressing people. And you can see as you listen to this story how they did it, how they, in that time period, so successfully. It's a shame, isn't it? Just check I'm still live. Am I there? Good to see some of the comments referring to what we're talking about. That's great. The first Sabbath, he was there without ever coming to discuss the subjects in question or to give any opportunity to agree, if it were possible, on such. He went to work to vote us off the church roll. The objection was raised that we be given a church hearing, as some felt it was unfair that they be asked to strike us off when they had nothing against us, or without trying to go after the lost sheep, as the master did. Finally, however, we were voted off. On the Sunday night, he gave us a study on the sanctuary in his church, but no invitation was extended to me to attend and learn therefrom. No, probably he was afraid I might ask an awkward question or two, which might prove embarrassing in front of his congregation. For I know I am not the first one he has met who has resigned for the same reasons, and one learns by experience. I've mentioned the question of the 2,300 days 5 times to Pastor, but not once has he taken the subject up or helped me to see as they do, which he should be well able to do, seeing that he has preached it for 20 years. I spoke my mind when I accidentally met him in the mart, the supermarket in New Plymouth, and told him what I thought of his actions and the whole situation. He tried to compromise with me by asking me why I could not have gone on preaching, although I did not believe some doctrines. That's a classic. Sorry if you're listening at the podcast without the visual. I'm interrupting. That is a classic thing, isn't it? When we looked deeply at the Des Ford Glacier View kangaroo court, many of the good guys had said to Des, why can't you just put it in your back pocket? That was an exact quote from one of them on one of the shows. And back here, 1933-ish, Pastor Harvey says to Robert, why could you have not gone on preaching even though you didn't believe some doctrines? What do you think about that? Because I know a lot of gospel Adventists that, hey, that's not my Adventism, Big Tent Adventists, who don't believe these doctrines, those three, the sanctuary, 2,300 days, Ellen White as a prophet, they don't. Here it comes. And when they do speak up, they get cancelled. So the church is still trying to cancel and suppress and throw the ad hominem hand grenade out there. But now we have social media and they can't do it effectively anymore. That chook has flown, is that the term? And I know a lot of these guys don't believe. It's not me telling on them. They've said it on my shows. Prominent academics and scholars have said here to you guys publicly that they don't believe the 2,300 days. They don't believe Ellen White was a prophet, that she was devotional, and that they believe the sanctuary doctrine is incorrect. And back in the day, Des was demonstrating that the 2,300 days, the investigative judgment was wrong, that Ellen had got it wrong. My big issue with that is you can say she was wrong and just devotional, but what about the next little thought that follows right after? The next little thought that follows is, okay, she's wrong. That's all right. She's human. She's fallible. But God told her. He whispered in her ear and said the 2,300 days was correct, that Miller was right in the dates, but wrong in what happened. What do you do with that? That is the white elephant, in my humble opinion. What do you do with that? Liberal-minded, progressive Seventh-day Adventist. If you don't believe these doctrines, how do you so easily put them in your back pocket? Like I said to Bill Johnson when he essentially said the same. He wished Des had just, kept on teaching, and that these, the new theological views would just gradually have taken over into the church. They would have gradually permeated. I said to him, well, how did that work out for you? Because when I interviewed him, it was 40 years after Glacier View, and the church is as adamant about securing those teachings at the hub and core of Adventism as they ever were. So here we are 90 years ago, not just 45 years ago at Glacier View, and the Adventist leader is saying to Robert, why didn't you just keep preaching and just don't mention these other doctrines that you don't believe in? There you go. What do you reckon? So those writing and watching, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on that. And when if you were an Adventist and you're not anymore, how did you feel about, as you went through that process of letting go of those three, the 2,300, the sanctuary, and Ellen White as a prophetess? How did you go through, that process of knowing you didn't believe that stuff, but that you were still an Adventist? How did you keep going along to church each week and just putting that in your back pocket? Like in other denominations where they have a left and a right and they have differing theologies, the they're not as focused on shutting people's voices down. They tend to just go, oh well, we'll in Australia we have the Anglican Church, which is the same as the Episcopalian in the States, and they just have a high church and a low church. I don't even know if they call it a low church. It's the Anglican Church and the Anglican High Church, which is more conservative, fundamental, traditional. And they get on. In fact, the drummer in my band, the Outback Hippies, he is an Anglican, and both groups meet in the same church. The more traditional ones meet in the morning for the morning service, and the young people and those who want a more contemporary and a slightly different theology meet in the evening. Adventists, you go to Adventist towns here in Australia, I don't know if it's the same in America, but here in Australia, you literally go to a town. I used to do this all the time, and I would ask which is the conservative church and which is the liberal church. Often I was very lucky. I would get invited to sing at both because I loved all those old hymns, and I would just sing really mellow stuff. And then the youth church would invite me as well, if it were the liberal church, and I would do my more contemporary stuff. So I was very lucky. But the Adventists, as I've said, are really two churches in one. And sure, the big tent, liberal, progressive Adventists who, don't like being told that their church actually has some doctrines they don't believe in and are dangerous. Nothing to see here. Yeah, sure, they don't like being pinned down and categorized, but they are part of that big tent church. There's the big tent church and there's the traditional church. And the two it's not just culturally different. In fact, they have a lot of cultural similarities. They are theologically different. So Robert's sitting there going, well, I can't put it in my back pocket there, Pastor Harvey. Back to the article. I know some preachers who have admitted they do not believe in their church teachers. I think that is missing a word. But in such circumstances, I felt it my duty to resign. For those who are wondering what has caused me to resign from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I shall now reveal some of my findings in the following pages. When we read last week Monica's presentation, her open letter, she didn't really go into the theological reasons and discrepancies that she had. I think because her and Robert worked together very much in their writings and what they shared, and I'm sure that, like, when when we listened to her open letter, you could tell clearly she had a very, very good grasp on doctrine and the scholarly realms of theology, etc. So I think they just, both contributed to what we're about to read next. But this is very interesting, this section here, because he really does address some of these key doctrinal issues that he had, and he really unravels them. When I interviewed Pastor Ron Kelly, and I mentioned that the new theology, I didn't use a good word, I said kind of poisons. I didn't mean the people poison, but the actual theology poisons the traditional theology. And he said it in a much better way, because he's a traditional Adventist, Ron Kelly, Pastor Ron Kelly. Go and check him out there. I enjoyed my conversation with him. But he said the new theology unravels the traditional theology. And what you're about to hear is Robert unraveling some of these Adventist doctrines. Now, I can just see here, you can't totally see all the writing down the left. Is that a problem? Just let me know in the comments. And I can't wait to go through and read some of these comments. They're very, very good. Very interesting. And I did work out how to do this. Sorry. No. I'll just continue on. Okay. This is fantastic. His addressing of these issues. Where are we? Yeah. I shall now reveal some of my findings in the following pages. W. Prescott once stood up in a general conference and said, "We put on a sort of holy mask and say things that we ourselves know were not exactly true. And the brethren look soberly in our faces and know that we are not saying it exactly as it is. And we keep looking soberly at one another and saying things that we know are not exactly right. And the chairman makes explanations that he knows are not exactly true, but it would hardly do to say it exactly as it is. And so the smiling is up the sleeve and not on the countenance, and we go on with it." Wow. Incredible. Mrs. E.G. White as infallible prophetess. On February 7, 1871, their general conference passed the following resolution. This is important stuff, guys. This is digging into some actual doctrinal oppositional material that, yeah, a lot of it has been talked about before and since, but here it is being re-seen, brought back to life from two people that were shut down. In many ways, doing this show on them is to let their legacy live on. So let's listen. So 1871, the General Conference passes the following resolution: that we reaffirm our binding confidence in the testimonies of Sister White to the Church as the teaching of the Spirit of God. SDA Yearbook for 1914, page 253. Our position on the testimonies is like the keystone to the arch. Take that out, and there is no logical stopping place till all the special truths of the message are gone. Nothing is surer than this, that the messages and visions of Mrs. White belong together and stand or fall together. It's the Review and Herald Supplement, August 14, 1883. Message here meaning itch. Listen to this one by G.A. Irwin, General Conference President for many years, on page 1 of a tract entitled The Mark of the Beast. He reads, "It is from the standpoint of the light that has come through the spirit of prophecy," Mrs. White's writings, "that the question will be considered. Believing, as we do, that the spirit of prophecy is the only infallible interpreter of Bible principles, since it is the Christ, through his agency, giving the real meaning of his words. Oh, this is gold. Isn't it amazing that, people like this Robert and Monica have just put so much work in to find this material. Back then, they didn't have any kind of search engine. It's just incredible. I've just got to read that line again. It is from the standpoint of the light that has come through the spirit of prophecy, Mrs. White's writings, that the question will be considered, believing as we do that the spirit of prophecy is the only infallible interpreter of Bible principles, since it is the Christ, through his agency, giving the real meaning of his own words. I mean, progressive Adventists say, well, that's not what I believe. I can pick and choose that. But at the core of your denomination's belief system, its engine room, it is considered the keystone to the arch. Gold, I tell you. As with the ancients, the talking is done by the Holy Spirit through her vocal organs. The prophets spake as they were moved by the Holy Ghost. Review and Herald, October 5, 1914. And again, think you that he would choose an inferior mouthpiece through whom to instruct the remnant church? On the other hand, as it is the greatest crisis of all ages, naturally expect that the mouthpiece of God would use for this period would be inferior to none in the past ages. It's 1915, Review and Herald. What strong language. Mrs. White, not inferior to any of the prophets of the past, and therefore is on the same level as Moses, Isaiah, Daniel, Paul, and John. The above will be quite sufficient to show the attitude of their church toward Mrs. White. Though no end of such statements could be given, we shall now see that what Mrs. White claims for her own writings. In ancient times, God spoke to men by the mouth of prophets and apostles. In these days, he speaks to them by the testimonies of his Spirit. This is Ellen White, folks. And she knows that she is considered to be that testimony, that spirit of prophecy. In these days, he speaks to the people by the testimonies. This is Ellen White. And again, she goes on and says, yet now when I send you a testimony of warning and reproof, many of you declare it to be merely the opinion of Sister White. You have thereby insulted the Spirit of God. In these letters which I write, in the testimonies I bear, I am presenting to you that which the Lord has presented to me. I do not write one article in the paper expressing merely my own ideas. They are what God has opened up before me in vision. The precious rays of light shining from the throne. If you seek to turn aside the counsel of God to suit yourselves, if you lessen the confidence of God's people in the testimonies that he has sent them, you are rebelling against God as certainly as were Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Progressive Adventists, you aren't suggesting that Ellen is a prophet, that she's devotional, that she was flawed and a human. But the prophet herself is saying, don't turn this counsel aside just to suit yourselves. If you lessen the confidence of God's people in the testimonies that he has sent them, you are rebelling against God as certainly as were Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. This material lessens the confidence of God's people in the testimonies of Ellen White. And that's why the White estate got rid of it. And people say, well, it'll come out as an independently released piece of work. The damage is done, my friends. The damage is already done. It has been shown that the White estate and the church leadership fear the power of it. Now, ironically, I prefer what they say to the traditional Adventists' take on it. That's not the point. That's not in discussion here. What's in discussion here is that the progressives unravel traditional Adventism. They want to present a kind of Adventism that is warm and fuzzy and big tent, vibe-ish. But by doing so, they are lessening the confidence of God's people in the testimonies. And therefore, I can fully understand why the traditional Adventists want them gone. Can you guys see that as well? Like, do you agree that my assessment is accurate in this regard? That the traditional Adventists do not want the progressives around. They want them gone. Robert goes on to say, and there are many other such like statements. Now let us look in the scriptures for the test to be applied to a prophetess. Galatians 1:8 reads, "But though we, or an angel from heaven, preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be cursed." That's in Galatians, everyone. Galatians 1 verse 8. The apostles are saying, hey, if someone comes along after us and preaches something different to what we've said, which you can read right here in Galatians, let them be accursed. The Adventist doctrine of 1844, Ellen White as the prophetess having the testimony of Jesus, that is adding to what they wrote. In Revelation 22, 18, 19, if any man shall add unto these things, God shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life and out of the holy city and from the things that are written in this book. Keeping these scriptures in mind, we shall compare them with Mrs. White as we proceed further. This is great. He's now going to compare the Adventist teachings of Ellen White with the Bible teachings. Are you guys enjoying this as much as me? It's just incredible material. On looking into a book called Early Writings by Mrs. E.G. White, which contains the fundamental teaching of the SDA Church and which is found in the majority of Adventist homes, we find such teachings as the following. The Holy Ghost was poured out upon us, and I was taken off in the Spirit to the city of the living God. Then I was shown that the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ relating to the shut door could not be separated. The spirit of prophecy by Mrs. White is just as often called the testimony of Jesus Christ. And the time for the commandments of God to shine out with all their importance and for God's people to be tried on the Sabbath truth was when the door was opened into the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary, where the ark is, in which are contained the 10 Commandments. The door was not opened until the mediation of Jesus was finally established in the holy place, in the sanctuary, in 1844. Then Jesus rose up and shut the door of the holy place and opened the door into the most holy and passed within the second veil, where he now stands by the ark and where the faith of Israel now reaches. This is Early Writings, page 42, and this vision was given on March 24, 1849. Jesus has risen up and shut the door of the holy place of the heavenly sanctuary, and has opened the door of the most holy place and entered into to cleanse the sanctuary. That's page 250. On page 12, she writes, "The Lord has shown me in vision that Jesus rose up and shut the door and entered the Holy of Holies at the 7th month, 1844. Vision of Mrs. White, a word. Sorry, that is a different article. That's in a Word to the Little Flock, page 12. And a lot of progressives are saying, well, maybe it wasn't October, but it's around that time. She's saying, no, in vision, 7th month. Well, what is the 7th month? That's July, isn't it? What's going on with that? Anyway, what may we suppose the shutting of the door to denote? By this act is undoubtedly denoted the exclusion from all further access to saving mercy. Those who have rejected its offer during the time of probation. But can any impenitent sinners be converted if the door is shut? Of course they cannot. Though changes that men would call conversions may take place. And that's 1861 by A. Hale and endorsed by James White. James, of course, was Mrs. White's husband. When we come to that point of time, the 10th day of the 7th month, 1844, all our sympathy, burden, and prayers for sinners ceased, and the unanimous feeling and testimony was that our work for the world was finished forever. He is still merciful to his saints and ever will be. Jesus is still their advocate and priest, but the sinner was left without an advocate when Jesus passed from the holy place and shut the door in 1844. That's James White in Present Truth, page 79, May 1850. Wow. See, that's that whole shut door thing that the church has scurried to try and eradicate and remove. Yeah. That is very, very clearly saying that those of us that are accepted the message of 1844, Jesus is still their advocate as priest. But those who didn't, the sinner, was left without an advocate when Jesus passed from the holy place and shut the door in 1844. Even Ellen, of course, distanced herself from that teaching as time went by. I was shown what did take place in heaven at the close of prophetic periods in 1844. Jesus ended his ministration in the holy place and closed the door of that apartment. Darkness settled upon those who had heard and rejected the messages of his coming, and they lost sight of him. Early Writings, page 251. Satan appeared to be by the throne, trying to carry on the work of God. I saw them look up, those outside the door after it closed, to look up to the throne and pray, Father, give us thy spirit. Satan would then breathe upon them an unholy influence. In it there was light and much power, but no sweet love, joy, and peace. That's Early Writings, 56. And Robert adds, when it's in brackets, that's him adding a little bit. The above statements show the teaching that probation closed in 1844, but let us now see what she says because of those who are shut out. You all still with me? Just quickly check the... I can't wait to read some of these comments. At the end, we might go back and have a look at some. And yes, so let's now see what she says becomes of those who are shut out. See, this, let's just say she changed her mind on this. She was human, but she is saying God told her this. And what we are seeing right here, it's a smoking gun, everyone. This is not what the Bible prophets taught. This is not what the apostles taught. They talked of an end time judgment where people would be shut out and people would go in. They preached the coming to the throne and the sheep go one way and the goats go the other. We're not saying there's no judgment. The Christian teaching claims, of course, a judgment. But what is being said here is that happened in 1844. That is in direct opposition to what the Bible teaches. And later, yes, Adventists have tried very hard to distance themselves from what you are hearing today. Very hard. Because they know that it is glaringly obvious what a false doctrine this was. And progressive Adventists can say, well, people got it wrong and she misinterpreted the vision. I think she even says later that God covered part of the vision so she couldn't see the truth. Well, you can't do that. Once you've said it from your mouth and you've preached it in your pamphlets and you've gone, a word to a little flock, early writings, once you've produced material that has gone out there and you've claimed to have a special message and you're a prophetess, if you teach a doctrine that is different, as Galatians 1:8 says, you are to be cursed. You can't just see her as devotional. What do you guys think? I think the shut door, along with the scapegoat, these doctrines that Adventists try to distance themselves from and say, hey, that's not my Adventism. Well, it was, and you still love and believe in, whether she's devotional or prophetess, you still believe in Ellen White as being sent or used by God. Well, you can't pick and choose. You can't go, well, I love that little part of, Desire of Ages. It was so beautiful. Brought me to Jesus. I just love it so much. That's why I'm still an Adventist. And ignore the elephant in the room. Oh, dear. I'll just read I'm not sure if I read this one or not, but the above statements show the teaching that probation closed in 1884. But let us now see what she says becomes of those who are shut out. The light behind them went out, leaving their feet in perfect darkness, and they stumbled and got their eyes off the mark and lost sight of Jesus and fell off the path down into the dark and wicked world below. It was just as impossible for them to get on the path again and go to the city as all the wicked world which God had rejected. That's a word to a little flock, a vision by Mrs. White, page 14. It was impossible for them to get back, for according to the above divine revelations, probation had closed in 1844. As we see again, the enemies of the present truth have been trying to open the door of the holy place that Jesus has shut, and to close the door of the most holy place which he opened in 1844. Our early writings, number 43. Steve Daly, when I interviewed him one of several times, I think he said around 35 to 40 paragraphs had been, or sentences had been taken out of early writings. And I think that what we're reading here, some I've heard, but some I haven't heard. I think we're actually, because this is 90 years old, this particular writing, over 90 years, I think we're getting to hear some of these snipped out passages. The enemies of the present truth have been trying to open the door. Yeah. The present truth referred to here, says Robert Vowless, was that which they were teaching at that time, and the enemies were all others. Probation had closed for the latter, therefore it was no use them trying to open the door, for Jesus has shut it against them. So what do these do that were shut out? Mrs. White will tell you in Early Writings, page 274. And this particularly is Adventism 1 to 1844 to 1851. That 7-year period. They really thought Jesus was coming back in 1851. Ellen White writes, I saw that since Jesus left the holy place of the heavenly sanctuary and entered within the second veil, the churches have been filling up with very unclean and hateful bird. I saw great iniquity and vileness in the churches, yet their members profess to be Christians. Their profession, their prayers, their exaltations are an abomination in the sight of God, said the angel. God will not smell in their assemblies. Not sure what that means. Then I saw that Jesus prayed for his enemies, but that should not cause us or lead us to pray for the wicked world, whom God has rejected. When he prayed for his enemies, there was hope for them, and they could be benefited and saved by his prayers, and also after he was a mediator in the outer apartment for the whole world. But now his spirit and sympathy were drawn from the world, and our sympathy must be with Jesus and must be withdrawn from the ungodly. I saw that the wicked could not be benefited by our prayers. Then I saw concerning loving our neighbors. I saw that the scripture did not mean the wicked world whom God had rejected that we must love, but he meant our neighbors in the household and did not extend beyond the household. Oh dear. So she's trying to say, well, the Bible teaches we to love our neighbor. Yeah, but they're the only those that are within our household. That doesn't even mean brothers, sisters, mum and dad. That means within the household of those who believed the 1844 message. They are our neighbors. I mean, these guys that compiled this book, a lot of incredible people. I'm not criticizing them. I'm showing that when they speak up, they get shut down. But these guys, over the last 40 years, in my observations, being a bit older in that time period instead of a child, they revealed a lot of stuff to me. They revealed all this stuff. And in some ways, this book was an attempt to say, hey, let's stop tearing Ellen White down, and let's reclaim her as and revise her as the prophet that she should be seen as in our big tent style Adventism. And but the damage was done. A lot of this stuff here, about loving your neighbours, but the neighbour really means only those who have believed in 1844. That that cat is out of the bag. I keep forgetting what that saying is, but anyway. Then that was from the Camden Vision in 1851, June 29, and signed by Ellen G. White. My brother, my sister, can you believe such a self-righteous teaching? This is back to Robert now. Can you believe that Christ has withdrawn himself from you and yours? Well, this is what SDA books teach, written by their prophetess, and every SDA member must endorse such a wicked teaching, for they must accept Mrs. White's writings as precious rays of light shining from the throne of God, or divine revelations. Oh, we get into a bit of plagiarism in a minute. How long have we been going today? Let's see. Hour and 20. We will keep going because I think this is such an important document to get up there and keep alive these New Zealanders, these dissidents from that beautiful slice of heaven, the land of the long white cloud, New Zealand. These guys, in my opinion, thanks to Gillian Ford, these guys, if it hadn't been for her researching and finding this material, it could have been lost forever. I want to really honour Robert and Monica Vowless, and how many incredibly creative. That's the other thing that struck me at my homecoming on the last weekend. Mine was the 40th anniversary. They had a lot of different decades and years represented, but my class of 85 was there. And the president of the South Pacific Division was in my graduation class. And here we are in a room of about 40 people. And here he is, Glenn Townend, the president of the SPD. And we were all in this room together. And I'm saying this was a nice thing, that all of us who have quite differing views and have led very different lives in the last 40 years were gathered in a room together. And we had a great time, and we shared our stories and chatted. And as I looked around the room, I felt just such a wonderful connection with my past and with people, some I'd not seen for 40 years, others I've kept in touch with, some only on Facebook. But it also hit me that as I looked around the room, there were many there like me who had left the church. And there were people in that room who shared their stories of trying to ask questions and being shut down. And my point is that how sad is that? The Adventist Church, because of its very clear policy to silence those who question. If you say I'm wrong, progressives, let me just hold this up one more time. You are demonstrably silenced if you speak up. If you're an employee, you're going to speak up even less. And what I'm saying is how sad, as I looked around the room And like I said, there was a really beautiful sense of camaraderie. It was great to see Glen Townend. It was great to see some of my old classmates. And then as I looked around the room again, and I just saw several people that were just such shining lights at Avondale. Fun, intelligent, creative, and gone from Adventism. And I had a wave of sadness. I gave it the best years of my life. I didn't leave until I was 53 or 54. 54, I think. And there are many who left a lot sooner than that. And so I want to honour Robert and Monica Vowless as we have discovered their material of not 40 years ago, over 90 years ago, in an era when they were really silenced. Let's remember these two. And as I said, over the next weeks, we will be looking at others. Grieve, Fletcher. My mind's gone blank. There's at least 6 or 7 of these New Zealanders that simply wanted to ask questions. These guys don't even want to leave the church. The people that ask the questions and get suppressed and silenced, they don't even want to leave. They still want to stay. Okay. Slave masters of USA to receive the 7 last plagues. Excuse me. In referring to the slave masters of USA, Mrs. White says, I saw the pious slave rise in triumph and victory and shake off the chains that bound him, while his wicked master was in confusion and knew not what to do, for the wicked could not understand the words of the voice of God. Early Writings 35. God will restrain his anger, but little longer. His wrath burns against this nation, especially against the religious bodies that have sanctioned this terrible traffic and have themselves engaged in it. Such injustice, such oppression, such sufferings are looked upon with heartless indifference by many professed followers of the meek and lowly Jesus. I like that she's saying that. I saw that the slave master will have to answer for the soul of his slave, whom he has kept in ignorance. And the sins of the slave will be visited upon the master. God cannot take to heaven the slave who has been kept in ignorance and degradation. I have heard about this, but reading, I don't even know if I've read it before, but this is mind-blowing. God cannot take to heaven the slave who has been kept in ignorance and degradation, knowing nothing of God or the Bible, fearing nothing but his master's lash, and holding a lower position than the brutes. But he does the best thing for him that a compassionate God can do. He permits him to be as if he had not been. Goodness. Are you taking this on board, everyone? Whoa, I just got shivers. But while the master must endure the 7 last plagues and then come up in the second resurrection and suffer the second most awful death, then the justice of God will be satisfied. Early Writings 276. Am I interpreting that right? Robert hopefully clarifies. It might have been all right for Mrs. White to say in 1844 that the slave master was going to endure the 7 last plagues, for she expected Christ to come in 1851. But now it is 1933. What have they to say now? So, yeah, he's saying there that, well, these plagues didn't eventuate, Christ didn't return. But am I reading correctly this other little thing? Have I interpreted that wrong? Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm very happy to be told. But isn't he saying that because the slave master has kept them in ignorance, they won't go to heaven? But the best and most compassionate thing God will do is he permits him to be as if he had not been. See, that's no redemption for a human right there. Tell me in the comments. I'm going to quickly check now because I haven't come across that one before. Good to have so many people watching still. Look, I did think that when I embarked on reading this stuff that I would lose you guys. But wow. Yeah, look, let me know. Did I just hear that and read that correctly? Because Robert doesn't seem to say much on that. Okay, he's got a lot to say about plagiarism. Let's get into this one because this is one that traditional and progressive Adventists love to defend. Oh, it was just the times. It was different back then. Copyright law was different. Well, copyright law was different in the sense that someone could re-release a book already published, say, in the UK or in Europe, and release it in the States and not pay any royalties back to the original owners. Yeah, that was one thing that was different. But the idea of plagiarism definitely existed back in Ellen White's time. The borrowing of someone else's material and passing it on as if it's your own. That definition in the dictionary was there back then, the same as it is now. And sure, they got Ramick, the Adventist Church hired a Catholic lawyer to defend Ellen White. Well, that's what defense lawyers do. They will put a case forward that defends their client. And he was paid by the Adventist Church to defend Ellen White. And he did. And so everyone went, oh, see, nothing to see here. A lawyer said she didn't plagiarize. Go and search my interview with Jim Wagner. He was the lawyer for Walter Ray and of White Lie fame. And it's a fascinating interview. And he talks about this. Okay, back to Robert Vowless. Plagiarism. Turning to the Bible again, I read, God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets. That's Hebrews 1:1. And for the prophecy came not into old time by the will of man, but holy men of God spake as they were moved by the Holy Ghost. 2 Peter 1:21. I do not know how the SDAs interpret the above scriptures. For Mrs. White, the prophetess of the remnant church, is recognized as perhaps one of the greatest plagiarists. Let anyone compare the great controversy sorry, it's just rebooting for some reason. There we go. Let anyone compare the great controversy by Mrs. E.G. White with the book entitled History of the Reformation by d'Aubergine. Oh, I have known how to pronounce that. Orbine. Oh, dear, I should have practiced that one. The History of Protestantism by J.A. Wiley, History of the Waldenses by Wiley, History of the Sabbath by Andrews, and Sanctuary by Smith. Then they will soon see where her inspirations came from. Also, it would be found interesting to compare her first edition of the Great Controversy with the last edition. A very marked difference will be found in thought and expression. The criticism was so strong against her plagiarism, that she was forced to make the alterations. Patriarchs and Prophets by Mrs. E.G. White received some wonderful help from Adam Clarke's commentaries, as we cannot help but notice when comparing the differing paragraphs. It is now becoming a well-known fact, this is 1933, that Steps to Christ was written by Miss Fanny Bolton without any dictation or assistance whatever from Mrs. White. Yet it carries Mrs. White's name. Is this in keeping with the 8th commandment? Some people think if they keep the 4th, it does not matter so much about the others. Some of their pastors say that all the critics of Mrs. White could not put together one chapter of Desire of Ages by the same author. No, perhaps not. And it is very evident that Mrs. White was not able to produce many of them, or in fact, any of them. Desire of Ages was culled from other authors on the life of Christ. Special mention may be made of Geikel's Life of Christ. Again, it is interesting to compare her first edition of Desire of Ages with the latter, and again, notice the changes in thought and expression. And even as late as 1926, Desire of Ages was undergoing another revision. I trust that Mrs. White's critics are more honest than to copy the words of another author's pen in order to write a chapter of Desire of Ages. Now, we do know that Fred Veltman in the 80s, over 8 years, and I'm hoping to have Warren Trenchard on the show soon, who has written a lot about this French Veltman and the Desire of Ages copying. So Veltman was hired to research the copying. He looked at 15 chapters of Desire of Ages. And look, Robert's onto it here. He's onto what's going on there in the copying. And people say, oh, well, only 2% was copied. That's 2% word for word. It's upwards of, I think, 85% of paraphrasing and obvious borrowing of the themes and content, not just because they are Bible themes, but you can literally look at some of these other authors, like the Life of Christ from Geike, and you can see the whole theme of it and then just recreate it, and a lot of the words had just changed a little bit. So, this is done and dusted. She borrowed illegally and passed it off as her own, and then had the gall to say that God had told, hey, here's some thoughts. What about the Steps to Christ? Written by Fanny Bolton without any dictation or assistance whatsoever from Mrs. White. And her and Marion Davis, boy, I wish they'd written some books. Their writing is beautiful. We hear so much about her health reform teachings, but they do not mention that the teachings were taken from 3 other doctors, books written by Dr. Cole, Jackson, and Thrall. In 1883, and not only can you tell that she copied from them, she copies the errors they made as well. In 1883, she published sketches from the life of Paul, and in the preface, there was a statement. The writer of this book, having received special help from the Spirit of God, is able to throw light upon the teachings of Paul and the application to our own time, as no other authors are prepared to do. This book was copied so strongly from Life and Epistles of the Apostle Paul by Connie Barenhausen that Connie Barenhausen served notice upon the Review and Herald Publishing Association that unless the book was taken off the market, they would bring a suit against them for plagiarism. Mr. Harvey Kellogg, who was the manager of the publishing house, informed Mrs. White that they would not undertake to publish any more copies of such unless she would stand for the responsibilities of meeting the threatened suit. Needless to say, no more have been printed, and her order for a new edition, which had just been previously booked was withdrawn. Dr. Stewart published a booklet of 89 pages in which he arranged parallel columns of quotations from Mrs. White's book, 11 sketches from the life of Paul, and the book of Connie Berenhausen just mentioned. And the quotations read like this: Connie Berenhausen's "The judges sat in the open air upon seats hewn out in rock on a platform which was ascended by a flight of stone steps immediately from the agora." Mrs. White's "The judges sat in the open air upon seats hewn out in the rock on a platform which was ascended by a flight of stone steps from the valley below." See how little words are shifted and changed? She's fully, it's like she's gone, right, let's just change this a bit here and there. And then Fanny and Marion would pretty it up even more. In the preface, where it is said, having received special help from the Spirit of God, why did they not speak the truth and write, having received special help from Connie Berenhausen? As this is only the introduction to some of the things which I have found out, I shall not say more here about this wicked plagiarism which is put down as the precious rays of light shining from the throne of God. And I would never dare say or intimate that God was a plagiarist. Would you? Just checking how much more to go. Quite a bit. I might, there's not too much, but enough we could do tomorrow to finish off. So I think, I just remember we're up to supposed precious rays of light. Yeah, I think we will leave it there for today and continue tomorrow, same time. There's only probably about 20 minutes more to read, but we'll have a great chat tomorrow. And just there's some really good stuff coming up. There's been great stuff already, but there's some more really great material coming up. So join me tomorrow. I'm going to read some of the comments now, but join me tomorrow, same time, and we will continue on. And I'm reading all of this from truthorfables.com. And Gillian Ford has put together a pamphlet, leaflet, booklet. Let's call it a booklet, which she is going to send to me to disperse as I see fit. She sent it to a few others as well. And I will look forward to making that available to you guys for free. So we've been looking today at the story of Robert Thomas and Monica Adelaide Vowless, story not to be forgotten. Tomorrow we will read the last little bit there of Robert's words. Next week we will look at Grieve, and we'll have another Dr. Ford rewatch next week as well. They're just as fresh too. Incredible. Thank you again for your support. And if you'd like to contribute, look, just a few dollars. Buy me a coffee. People have chatted about how they can support me in other ways via different PayPal. I am setting things up. I've got a Patreon account, and there's going to be some special material available there for those that subscribe. And some people have chosen to send me $5 or $10 a month, and it just really helps. I love doing this. I've often said I would do it for nothing. In many ways, I am actually, because the money I get now covers the expenses. But I would love to, continue on and move towards making this a viable part of my career as I get older, and I'm doing gigs less and less. I'm enjoying coming out here into my studio and sharing all this content with you. And yeah, so paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music, Dixon, Dixon with a kiss. A few dollars, you'd be amazed if even just a few of you just were able to hand over the value of one coffee per month. It would just really, really help me continue providing this content. And very excited with our Good News Fellowship having its own YouTube channel. There's already we've been there live, I think, 4 times now, and there's plenty of content also that I've uploaded from Voice Life Fellowship, which was kind of the seed for Good News Fellowship. So if you go to youtube.com/@Gospel Good News Fellowship, you will find us there. I might put a little reminder in Facebook to those watching on Facebook that we are going live there, but we're not going to be going live into Facebook. It's only live at this channel, at Gospel Good News Fellowship. And yeah, let's see if I can even see that. Just to show you what it looks like. Because some people have tried to find it, and there's lots of people who have channels called that. Can you see that? There we go. That's what it looks like. Go and subscribe and join us 6:30 p.m. Pacific time Thursday night, 11:30 a.m. New South Wales time, Australia. Okay, quick glance through some of the comments. Jane has written, why would God show her visions of historically inaccurate events? Very true. Moto Sapien says, Peter, I'll gladly buy you a coffee. Just send me your mug. I've been tracking down, someone here suggested a company. So we have a company over here that I just send, just go to their site, do the artwork. They send me the mugs. There's a place, of course, in the States that does that. And I'm going to be setting up an account with them. And if you order a mug, you can buy it and they'll give me my percentage and they will freight it to you guys at a very cheap rate. So this will be available in the United States very soon. And when we gather together for book club with Rochelle every couple of weeks, we can all have a cheers moment. Michael says the visions were from demonic sources because they were all wrong. What do you guys think about that? I tend to think it was because she got a rock in the head at a young age and that she was just carried away with catastrophizing and drama and attention seeking. And one thing led to another. But I might be wrong. What do you guys think? Here's a good point. 2 cracked eggs. Gospel. The Bible shows, and he might be writing to Stephen Beagles, might have said something there earlier. The Bible shows prophets admitting they don't understand a vision, but never declaring an error. And let's face it, this shut door thing that we talked about earlier, that, wow, boy, wasn't there some gems in there? The shut door stuff, which I've known about and studied, but there was some things there that just kind of opened my eyes even more. And what was she saying about the slaves? Because of their masters keeping them in ignorance, that the masters will be punished, but the slaves will be as if they never were? Am I getting that right? That's it? No redemption? No salvation? Whew, that was a big one for me today. And the fact that they taught close of probation 1844, not to come, it already happened. Ellen said that God told her that was accurate, that was true for several years. Am I the only one blown away by that? Let me know in the comments. BDC writes, Ellen, we need a testimony to get people to give money to the purchase of property. Wow. Yeah. And Rick writes, we're called to stand on the word. Oh, good. Thank you, Cindy Lou. Cindy Lou Woo. She just grabbed Pirates of Privilege off the internet. That book is amazing. Go and get it. You can get it for free, can't you, Cindy Lou? Is that right? By Walter Ray, after he'd written The White Lie. And the church, look, I could be wrong, but I'm 90% sure Jim Wagner told me this, and I'd heard it before. We're going to stop his sustentation, his retirement money, if he published it. So he didn't. But when the internet became a thing, I think his son, and if anyone knows any contacts with Walter Ray's family, son, daughter, it might be daughter, I would love to have them on the show to talk about this, because I'm pretty sure his son made it available. And Angela highlights, yes, great book. And Jane writes, Gospel Adventist, you are so close to getting the point. I'd love to know what Stephen Beagles said up the posts. They've disappeared. Ray Doherty writes, Gospel Adventist, that's the question you have to test. Merely asserting the dichotomy is not evidence in her favour. Someone might bring me up to speed. And Michael adds, I've never read a vision of hers that was true. Fred writes, she was a visionary. She was spot on about what's happening in the US with the push to join church state. Truth is the truth. Is that you, Fred? Has someone stolen your name? I can't imagine you saying that. Yes. This is a good one, Ray. Compare Deuteronomy 18:22 and the food for worms vision. Like that one, and again, another smoking gun. Like how do you? I know how they attempt to get out of it, but here she is saying, "Hey guys, I think it was 1851. That she really thought her husband Joseph Bates, really thought that 7 years from 1844 was going to see the return of Christ. And she said live, it was transcribed, that there are people here today who will be food for worms, but others will see literally the return of Jesus. And the names of the people in that meeting it were written down. And I remember seeing the list of the names and word getting around when the last person died. There was much sadness and gnashing of teeth. And that vision, didn't come true. People say, well, it's conditional, isn't it? Conditional. Well, then can't any person claiming to have a vision say that? That means you can never call anyone a false prophet. No, can't do that, because every single vision claim, if it didn't come true, you say, oh, well, it's conditional. So, okay, can't prove it then. No such thing as a false prophet. She did predict utter hatred towards Adventism by other Christians. But anyone can do that, Stephen. Anyone starting any kind of movement, she would have felt that hatred at the time. Like literally days after the 1844 non-event, she was feeling absolute hatred from her people in her town. So it's not hard to extrapolate, people are going to... It wasn't a prediction. It was a claim of what was actually happening. Most Christians, says Ray, are indifferent to Adventists. Not only indifferent, don't even know. My wife, she'd never even heard of a Seventh-day Adventist. Never even heard of one. Yeah, and Ray says if they know about them. Yeah. BD says she knew her scam would be exposed eventually. Ray adds SDAism is an irrelevant group. Andy Mack adds demonic or not was wrong. That's right. Exactly. I love that, because you don't have to sit and ponder, oh, is it demonic, or was she just a sensationalist seeking attention and one thing led to another? It doesn't matter. She was wrong. 1844 was not the close of probation. God told her to tell us that it was. It wasn't. It's not biblical. That alone is enough. That was so clear. That's enough. She believed Jesus was God. I'm not sure what that means, Stephen. And thank you, Stephen Beagles, for persisting with the pushback that you get from many former Adventists. Hopefully it galvanizes your teachings so that you can present them even more clearly than you do, which I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying it helps, people pushing back helps to refine your skill. Okay, well. And Jane writes, that is an SDA teaching, that those who can't or were not taught the truth or as if they never existed. Most common modern examples are miscarried babies. Wow, and mentally impaired? Really? There are statements from her or from the church? Many of us have had miscarried baby experience. As if they never were? Oh, goodness. Look, and all movements and all religions have cray-cray people and cray-cray ideas. My point of today is that you should not suppress people asking questions. Have your cray-cray. Enjoy your Adventism, progressive or traditional. But please acknowledge that if you are an employed Adventist, you have no voice. If you are a retired Adventist trying to reclaim the prophet, you have little to no voice. So sure, that's not your Adventism. Believe whatever you want, but just acknowledge that the Adventist Church powerfully suppresses questioning more than other movements. We're not talking about the extremes and the bell curve. Your main bunch of people, movements on the bell curve, Adventism is a suppression machine. And Stephen, you must have said somewhere about she learnt and progressed as she went along. But let's look at the shut door. Yeah, she definitely distanced herself later from that, but she believed it at the time, and she believed God told her for many years that 1844 was the close, and that those who hadn't accepted the message of 1844 were shut out. Don't even pray for your neighbours. Why would God give you such a wrong teaching? If you were the remnant people being raised for a special moment as this, that the Lord would return any moment. That's why, because they thought he was coming back any moment. Probation's closed. He's coming back now, guys. You're already done. Those of us that believed 1844, we're saved. It's obvious reverse engineering. It's grasping at straws. And Schley writes, yes, that special divine progress revelation where God tells the prophet a falsehood and then gives them the truth later. And Dexter adds, ditto what Ray said. We're not criticizing you. I think that's to you, Stephen. We're questioning specific beliefs and teachings that she started and endorsed. Test every spirit. We're still sinners saved by grace, me and you. Stephen gets a lot of pushback and says that Ellen White's visions were either from God or the devil. I think that's what James White claimed as well. And Jane writes, I don't hate Adventists. I just roll my eyes. Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up and finish off the rest tomorrow. But I'll just read this one. 2 cracked eggs. 457 BC doesn't matter. If Daniel 8:26 was sealed until the end of the 2,300 days and the 490 was a part of it, then we shouldn't have known Christ was who 940 spoke of until 1844. Yeah. John Kaler writes, it's a cursed gospel that nullifies the cross and is outside of grace. Gospel Adventist writes, legalism exists in all churches. It was the original Christian heresy. I agree. My point is the degree to which people asking questions get shut down. So you're a good example, Stephen. People are asking you questions, and you're not shutting them down. You're allowing the conversation to go, whether it's upsetting for you or not, challenging, whatever. But yes, legalism exists everywhere. It exists within us. We can approach things we do with too much legalism instead of joy and love and manifestation of blissfully following the path of inquiry and learning. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that when people within a movement where legalism and liberalism are present, a healthy movement allows for dialogue. And so let's just say that there are churches and movements that begrudgingly allow a little bit, others allow a lot. Adventists allow this much. And even that's a bit of a scripted moment. If you're an employed Adventist, you cannot speak on a platform like this and share your concerns unless you are retired. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. What a great conversation today. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Take it easy. Until then, see you later.